sponsored by the Advancing Ag program, inspiring future farm leaders through leadership and mentorship experiences. For more information, go to advancingag.ca.
We're in a world where farmers and mums are fashionable, where youth have a voice and are credible, where values are as important as value, where big is bad and technology is evil. And that is a world that we live in agriculture. And we're also in a world where trust in agriculture is diminishing. And we say to ourselves, well, why the heck would this be? Why would this be? Well, first off, we need to truly understand that food is important. And it's probably that has been elevated in the COVID issues the last little while. Everybody is interested in their food and a lot more about it, not wanting to know more about it. People are confused. They're confused about their food and they're asking questions. Is it safe? Is it quality? How is it produced? Is it sustainable? All of these things are weighing on consumers. People are also wanting to know if they don't know much about modern farm practices. When 91% say consumers say they don't know virtually nothing about little or very little about what's going on, but 60% of Canadians say we are very interested in knowing more about what is happening in agriculture. So that's the good news. People don't really understand science today. What is natural? Consumers agree that salt is natural, but sodium chloride is not. Everybody loves their pets and their animals and their environment. So production, livestock agriculture is, why aren't you treating them like this? We have lots of critics and activists that are targeting agriculture, people from outside of agriculture increasingly impacting and influencing the industry in which we are after. And they all have an opinion, and they all think that Jill and her farm should be doing something a little bit different and a little better. And then, of course, we see videos, undercover videos, that can send some pretty powerful messages, whether they're real or capturing on things, and we have to be on top of all of this. So trust is a business risk. When the food system loses its trust, its ability to innovate and to operate and thrive is impeded. Now, how important is food? Of the 5 top most concerning things to Canadians today, 4 of them are related to food. The rising cost of food, keeping food affordable, healthcare is a real issue. It's probably jumped maybe even a little higher than it is today. Rising energy costs and safety and outside. So 3 of the 5 are from there. You can also see where Alberta rates in some of these things. We put them a little bit less. Some of the other things is some other life concerns. Where does climate change fit? Food safety, the humane treatment of animals, all of these things are impacting and making our decisions related to trust and food go forward. You'll notice that Alberta is not always in sync with what the rest of Canada is after either. Doesn't surprise us on climate change probably, but now, when asked, is our food system going in the right direction? Notice this trend does not look good, folks. That we are seeing that, yes, we're having a few more people saying that we're, from a Canadian perspective, are saying they're holding their own in the last couple of years. But there is 42% still of Canadians that aren't sure, and 24% think we're going in the wrong direction. How does that compare to Alberta? Well, Alberta, only 25% think that we're going in the right direction. There's considerable issues about our food system. Now, if we compare that to the U.S., the U.S. is not necessarily getting any bigger. The graph here shows things in a different order, but they too have got some major issues. So this is a big issue, is our whole food system. Now, who's responsible and who do we trust the most? Canadians, who do Canadians hold responsible for providing credible information? The most credible source is farmers. Then the food processors, government plays a pretty important role in that whole area, scientific, etc. It goes down the things. So those are who they hold responsible for providing credible information. So when we see our panelists talking about stuff, when they're coming at it from a farmer perspective, that's really good. Who do they trust the most? They trust farmers. Researchers are up there pretty high. Look at where government is, way further down. And even in Alberta, it's even further yet. So some good information that we can have as we build public trust. And we also need to remember that in our world, in today's world, if there's no trust, there's maybe not too much of us. Now, when we look at this is the global issue. And most of these global issues on trust, they start in Europe. They then move to California and into the rest of the US. And then they move to US and to Canada. That's how the thing. So we have in Canada, we have an opportunity to be able to move forward and do some things and learn from other areas. That is an opportunity. And one of the things that we're learning is that we can do things better together than we can individually at different areas. So those are some of the things. And the framework on the theoretical model on how you build public trust is rather simple and straightforward. Implementing this is bloody hard, but how you go about doing it in theory is pretty easy. First off, you need to do the right thing. You need to be seen as doing the right things. And if you get the people in the pork industry or the beef industry or the whatever sitting around and they start saying, well, we're doing the right thing. And we're looking after our animals right, and we're looking after our manure right, and we're doing all of these things right. Great. Does that build public trust? That's one of the pillars. The second thing they need to have is somebody telling and reinforcing and trusting assurance system, whether it be certification or whether it be the government saying that we have given it a label and done something. That's the second pillar. And then we must tell people about what we are doing and how we are doing this. And we must do this all on the foundation of transparency. In today's world, we better not have anything to hide. And we also need to have continuous improvement. In the old days, we used to put the feedlot by the creek. Well, we don't do that anymore. That's called continuous improvement. And then we can bring things together on a hub and what the pork industry is doing and what the crops industry is doing and what the beef industry is doing. When they all can come together, then we can start building public trust. So that's easy to say, but hard to do. And that's the approach that we're trying to take at the Centre for Food Integrity, is earning trust in Canada's food system. And that's an organization that I'm involved in. We've got a number of sponsors from across Canada and the whole works that are involved in trying to take this united approach together. And we're really just getting started in this whole thing. Our approach is to develop some communication initiatives to provide coordination and some trust building initiatives so that we can learn and work together. And then we're also providing the research and the development to be able to move things, to be able to help others, whether it be Ashley and what she's going to be saying in her group, or Jill and what they're doing. How can we provide the research and be able to provide individuals so that they can go forward and tell the story in a way that resonates and be able to build public trust in food and farming. And everybody has a role. All of us have a role in to be able to do the right thing, to be able to communicate to our friends, our neighbors, to our consumers. And when we work together, that's when we're going to have the stuff. So as I conclude my comments, what I'm trying to tell you is trust is a big issue. If you want to go fast, then you can go alone. But the old African proverb says, but if you want to go far, you should go together. And that's the approach that we're trying to take in Canada, to bring the various initiatives, allow each of them to be able to share their message and do that, but do it in a united approach. If you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, then go together. So those would be my opening comments as to where we are, why public trust is important, how we can get our heads around that, and then I'm going to turn it over to Craig, back to you, and I'll be part of the panel when you have the questions.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Kim. Ashley, I'll hand it over to you now.
Okay, so thank you so much, Kim. I think that was a great kickoff to our topic here. And for those of you that I haven't had the opportunity to meet, I'll just give you a little bit of a rundown on myself. So I'm Ashley Smith. My maiden name is Fox, for any of you guys know that may know Foxtail Livestock from Central Alberta. I was born and raised on a purebred beef farm 35 years ago, but my career within agriculture has taken me through many different facets. And here today, over the last 15 years, I've primarily been working within the grain sector, and both worked as an agronomy consultant privately and through both retail and as a supplier agronomist. And most recently, my family, we were actually going to be relocating from the Peace Country. We're moving here in a couple weeks down to Okotoks, as I've taken on a new role with BASF as a brand manager in the marketing division. Now, about a year and a bit ago, I had a kind of a whim opportunity that I went ahead and threw my name in the hat for a very unique mentorship program that the Alberta Wheat and Barley Commissions started running 3-4 years ago, called the Advancing Ag Future Leaders Program. And as I kick off my discussion in regards to public trust, I wanted to put a nice little plug in for Advancing Ag and what it has meant to me and my career so far. So truly, the Advancing Ag program is a great opportunity for any young and up-and-coming professionals within the industry, but also our producers within the industry, to take their career to the next level through mentorship opportunities, but also a large focus on leadership and really creating a voice for our industry. As I had said, they're trying to inspire through both leadership and mentorship. So taking what you do in your everyday life to that next level. And so the true vision is to foster a network of young professionals and leaders through our cropping industry particularly. And then their true mission is to pair up together agri-professionals and producers and as mentees with industry leaders as mentors to really grow their knowledge and facilitate professional development opportunities. As most of us within the industry, we have a multitude of different professional leadership and development opportunities within our own jobs and employment, but really looking at taking it to that next level. Now, through this program, as a mentee, we have to develop what we call focused learning objectives. And I tried to take a snapshot of what my focus has been over the last year. And I'd say my largest focus has been surrounding public trust and everything leading into public trust. Because when I look at my career over the last 15 years, working one-on-one with farmers and producers and our primary producer level, all the way now working into our head office level is where are we seen as an industry as a whole, and particularly the grain sector at the consumer table. And so I really tried to focus all of the mentorship opportunities and really working with Kim McConnell as my mentee or mentor, and the opportunities I've had through picking his brain and then attending different conferences and such over the last year, really focusing on public trust. You do get the opportunity to expand further. I was also looking at doing a deep dive on how our consumers, consumer demand in particular, and the changes within diets affect our primary producers and our ability as producers to adapt our productions, whether it is grain production or livestock production. And I know Jill can speak quite highly within the beef sector for sure on how our producers are very versatile and their ability to adapt and change to demands in consumer diet. Prime example, you look at when we look at plant-based proteins and how our industry has changed as a whole in approaching and addressing that change in diet. The third objective that I really focused on as well was developing a deeper understanding of the whole movement behind the license to farm. As a producer myself, my family still operates both a purebred and commercial herd. They moved over to Saskatchewan here about 5-6 years ago to expand their land base, but it's at my true core. I am a cattle producer, and I really do feel that is something that the movement behind license to farm and ability to connect our consumers to our producers, both within our grain sector and beef sector, has been a huge movement. So from there, I wanted to kind of take you through some of the initial information and such that I've really been able to pull through regarding the crop sector. So when we look at really building our consumer trust and where we're at as a sector, we know I know Kim did a fantastic job kind of laying the land of where we are as consumers and what the changes in our industries have had to address in public trust. But when I look at today's modern consumer, we all know that now they really demand on the consumer interest on how their food is grown. How are our cattle raised? How are our products produced? How are they processed? And how are they truly brought to market? So that expressed interest, it's an interesting perspective in the sense that the consumer voice is getting louder and louder, and how we are getting access to the voice. So when you see the increase in social media and just the access to information can also be a good thing, but also a negative thing at the same time, because you see a lot of mixed messages. And I loved the slide that Kim mentioned in regards to who people actually trust. And I feel at the core, our producers are very high on that level, as Kim had mentioned. But when you see a lot of the information coming, whether it's through the processors and at the market level, and when you see the trust levels not quite there. So and especially at the government level as well, there's work that needs to be done in order to address building that trust with our consumers. There's also an expressed interest with consumers within the grain sector on transparency and what our impact is on environmental sustainability. And then on the beef side, of course, is the ethical animal care and husbandry. So how are we addressing these topics as a whole, as an industry, but also individually in each sector? We've always prided ourselves as an industry on being able to produce food supplied that's based on high quality raw goods from ethical practices and processes that really emanate our integrity as producers and as an industry through the entire supply chain. As a primary producer, whether you're conducting your business one-on-one with your suppliers and such, we have to be able to make that connection with our consumer through every single link in that chain. As a supplier myself within the grain sector, I've always tried to really build that trust level with my producers, but I also do feel that we have a responsibility as a supplier within the industry that we are able to conduct ourselves in a professional manner in a high integrity, high transparency in order to maintain and build that trust for consumers so that they understand what our role is within the industry and what our involvement is. So as I had mentioned, kind of a bit of a background on myself, I was born and raised in the beef industry. So I was a born and bred beef kid, so grew up through the 4-H program and youth breed associations. And really, I found those programs are a great opportunity to focus and drive the teaching for our youth on key basic skills that encompass production and techniques and communication and marketing of our products. I never once growing up felt like I was under scrutiny as a producer, but now as I get deeper into the industry, I do feel our producers face scrutiny every day on what they are or how they're producing their products and what the actual trust is within the food supply chain. So I feel that as I've witnessed firsthand with producers, the growing desire of consumers for more information on how this food is produced and really trying to connect our producers as much as we can is really important. There's a definite need for involvement through the food production sector in order to connect, build integrity, grow that trust, and be transparent. in order to close the gaps that exist in the industry through to consumers. We all need to come together at the same table, as Kim had mentioned, and work together in order to achieve this, in order to make sure that we can really rebuild and grow the trust that we have for our products. So as I had mentioned, the Advancing Ag Leadership Program gave me the opportunity to do a deep dive into the grain sector in particular. And I took this opportunity to work with Kim in kind of trying to guide where my research should be and where I wanted to grow my knowledge within it. So in looking at the Canadian grain sector, and specifically within the Grains Roundtable and their work on the Public Trust Working Group, there's a substantially large amount of information and work that's being done within that group as well. So I wanted to pull and present to you guys a little bit of information that I gained through research and participation in conferences over this last year on what this group is doing for the grain sector. So through a review with the working group, their most recent updates were identifying what priority issues, and these issues aren't surprising. As an agronomist within the industry, they didn't surprise me when I saw which were the top 3 for what our consumers find the most top of mind for their concerns. So of course, we look at crop protection, pesticide usage, plant breeding technology. So we know all through social media, I would say a black eye on plant breeding techniques, so GMOs and new breeding techniques and how they're actually understood. And then at its core, food safety. So we look at chemical residues and bacterial contaminations. So these are all, this is information that I'm pulling directly from the Strategic Action Plan within the Canadian grain sector, that it's work that they've been doing with Synthesis Agri-Food Network. When we look at taking that to the next step, so we look at building organizational trust and which organizations have the most success in building trust. So it's those that it's not just a communication campaign. And so a bit of research that I did pulled directly from the Center for Food Integrity and work that they were doing in a presentation that came from 6P Communications, where they were looking at case studies on successful public trust initiatives. So we're looking at, as an industry, not just doing communication campaigns. We really have to go right back to the core and utilize a framework that's actually going to rebuild trust. So at its core, as an organization, whether you're a producer level or as a supplier down through the grain sector into the marketing of our actual products, is really 3 key pillars. You look at, does your organization do the right thing? Do your staff do the right thing? Does our industry have a trusted and verification system so that we can actually attest to what our products go through in order to get from the field all the way through the processing sector into and onto that consumer table? And then at the final end, I guess the biggest picture and the biggest pillar is, of course, the communication and how we communicate that message. So it's not just a flashy marketing campaign, but really looking at our core, how we build and rebuild who we are as an industry. There we go. So just to wrap up, for the research that I've been doing over the last year and what I've been able to see from our grain sector in specifics, I really do feel that one of the top priorities is how we contribute to organizational success through those 3 pillars. So as I said earlier, I think my key takeaways for what I want to make sure that I represent myself within my organization, but also within the industry, is that we make that connection. We connect with our consumers, we connect with our producers, and everywhere along that supply chain. We, at our core, we drive integrity because at its sense, when we're operating and doing business on a day-to-day basis, if we don't have integrity, then we don't have a leg to stand on. And with integrity comes that trust, and trust at its core relies on transparency. So those are really where I see moving forward the 4 key points for myself within my career. But I hope that as an industry, and then the grain sector in particular, we can really emanate and grow to keep building the public trust back into our industry. I just wanted to make a final note to thank both the Alberta Wheat and Barley Commissions and their sponsorship and drive behind the Advancing Ag Mentorship Program. I know they're always looking for mentors and mentees. Usually the applications for mentees is in the fall and winter, like through December and January. So I highly recommend any young professionals, producers in particular as well, take the opportunity. It's a great program. You get to work with mentors like Kim McConnell in particular, which has been a fantastic year of learning, and I look forward to having a lifelong friendship and mentor out of him as well. And with that, I will pass it back to Craig.
Thanks for that, Ashley. That's amazing. And yes, the Advancing Ag program is absolutely fantastic. Our third presenter is Jill Harvey. Jill is the co-owner of Harvey Ranching here in Central Alberta, as well as she's the host of the Food Careers podcast, which you can find on Apple, Google Play, if I remember correctly, and it's also carried on the ruralrootscanada.com platform as well. So I'll hand it off to Jill.
Perfect. I hope my internet's stable enough that I don't get frozen and my mouth is half open and looks all distorted. But anyhow, does it sound good? I'm just going to continue and hope it
Sounds good.
is.
Yeah, it sounds good, Jill.
Thank you so much for having me on. Okay, great. Thank you so much for having me on today. And I'm not sure if it's coincidence, but Kim McConnell's been a mentor of mine over the years, especially in the early years building the Cattlemen's Young Leaders program. So anyhow, it was really exciting to hear Ashley's experience on her mentorship through Alberta Barley and the commission as well. So as a rancher and now the co-chair of the Champions of Agriculture, the agriculture industry committee that advises Minister Dreeshen here in Alberta, I've been really thinking about public trust more and more. My involvement in it spans quite a few years. And so just a few months ago, I decided that I would be a part of the solution, not the solution. I don't think there is one solution to public trust, but be one of the avenues and just go for it. So when it comes to public trust, I do believe that when you look at it, it is very, very simple. It is shared values. So the Center for Food Integrity has explained that over and over again, that shared values is the best way to communicate with the public. And so that's broad. Agriculture is huge. It's diverse. And even if you're in one segment of agriculture, it doesn't mean you understand all of the other parts of agriculture. So to expect that of the people or of the audience or the public is a lot to ask. And so I think it's really, really important to know which audience to reach with what kind of communication and at what time. So that reminds me of a quote, and that is, do and say the right thing in the right way at the right time to the right person to get the right result. That's from Martin Rooney. And I truly believe that with my podcast, I'm looking at those who are interested in agriculture, who understand food but want to know more and really like that career aspect. So I launched a podcast called Food Careers last fall and had 9 episodes in season 1 and plan to have a season 2 coming up here in the fall. So here's an example. If you want to go on to Apple or Spotify, that's what it looks like. That's the Food Careers podcast. And I think where I wanted to go with this is that when you look at the audience you want to capture, you want to be interesting and entertaining. I'm not probably quite entertaining yet with the topic, but I think that depends on the audience you're looking at. If you want to entertain, you probably should have your message during funny cat videos or videos of people who are like jumping into pools and hurting themselves. That's what my daughters love to watch whenever I'm like pulling out the knots in their hair after they have a bath. And that's when you should probably have some kind of promotion, marketing, and so on. But when it comes to something, and as far as when people are thinking about the kind of career that they'd like, or the kind of companies that they'd maybe want to look into a little bit more, I think that's the audience that I'm capturing with the Food Careers podcast. Now, I've been really fortunate to have over 2,600 downloads of 9 episodes. So I think that's been a really good start, and I'm wanting to get to really get to the next level with the audience and understand the audience a little bit more, and hopefully that'll come with time. What I did in season 1 was interview people who I felt were very, very successful in their part of the food supply chain. So on the first episode, I interviewed Ross Springford from Springford Farm Market, who has a gate-to-plate farm store in Nanusa Bay in British Columbia. And then I went all the way to the CEO of Master Feeds, one of the largest animal nutrition companies in Canada, as well as a young man who works for a co-op in the UK. Just one second, I'm on. Okay, sorry, I've got one of my daughters came in. This young man from the UK who is talking about the work that he does in marketing in both the dairy and beef sector when it comes to purchasing product from the farmers in the UK. The list goes on. There's a lot of other interviews that I did from PEI, from potato farming there, as well as a local shop, a coffee shop that was built from the ground up on basically community spirit and having the right attitude with fresh food and looking at that local perspective. I think one of the points that Kim made a little earlier about big being bad and larger industries maybe being viewed a little bit negatively, that is my concern. I do think that there's room for big in terms of efficiency and safe, affordable food, but also the streams that are maybe more local and more so what people feel might be better for them. I think that our consumer is always right, so we need to communicate to them effectively. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm looking towards season 2. If you want more information, you can find me on social media, Bright Pasture, or brightpasture.com is my website. And of course, the podcast is free. Go ahead, download, and enjoy.
Fantastic, Jill. Yes, the podcast has been absolutely amazing. I know it's a popular one on our platform as well when we post those, get those up there. So I guess my first question, jumping right into it, and it's open to all three of you, is for the farmers out there that are listening in, what would you tell them about the best way to deal with consumers that have concerns? Because sometimes those conversations aren't as pleasant to start off with. And then what have you heard from other farmers that have found successful ways to communicate with consumers?
If you wanted, I could take that first one. As a rancher myself, I've had some times where I've had very successful conversations and other conversations not so successful. I would say do not beat yourself up if one of your conversation doesn't go as planned. I think that having a bit of a plan of how to approach certain people or when, the right time, and how is really, really critical. So you're not going to be perfect at it right off the bat. I think it truly is about figuring out what that other person is looking for and what your shared value is. So for example, if their interests lie in, they're really big into dogs, for example, and you start talking about the different kinds of dogs and pedigreed animals. And then, for example, I have pedigreed animals too. And then you start talking about breeding animals and all those different things and their purpose. And then you get back down to animal care and there is ways to connect with people more effectively. Throwing a whole bunch of information at them probably is not the right approach. And honestly, I've failed doing that in the past. So I think less is more. Listen, then introduce some information you'd like to share, and then have a place where they can come back to you and for more information if they want it later.
Those are great points, Jill. I think one thing I'd love to add from that definitely is we're a very passionate industry. As producers and professionals involved within agriculture, it is our way of life. It truly is. When you get approached by consumers or have that opportunity to connect with consumers, the more you can remove the emotion from it, the better. You can express the fact that we are a very passionate industry and we take a lot of pride of ownership and a pride in what we do for a living in order to produce safe food for the world. But the more you can remove the emotion, and especially if they have a strong passion coming from their end as well, you can potentially come to that shared value and that understanding of where each perspective is coming from.
And the only thing I would agree with all that. Start with the values, connect with them. But also tell a story. Tell them a story about your own personal experience. And my dad wasn't a very good speaker. He didn't like doing that. But I'll tell you, he could speak with passion about what he was doing from a zero-till perspective. And why he did that, because he would talk about the fence lines and how high the dust and the dirt was from the fence lines from the dirty 30s when it blew all there. And he would say, never am I going to allow that on our family farm to be able to be something like that. Now, that the way he conveyed that was very, very passionate to family members and to consumers or whatever that he would interact with. But he didn't try to get in and tell them on facts and figures. He just told a story of an experience that he had. And when you speak with sincerity, when you tell a story with passion, you'll go a long way.
Well, that's some great advice there. I guess, how much have we seen the conversation explode over the last couple of months? I mean, I'll use the word, we were in unprecedented times. I know it's been thrown around a lot in the last couple of months here as we deal with COVID-19. But how has that conversation exploded, and how are we taking advantage of this opportunity to better explain about where people's food is produced?
Well, I'll maybe, first off, I think the whole area of food and how food is produced and how it's processed and that has elevated substantially in the last little while. There's considerable more interest in that. There's also considerable more vested interest players trying to put their perspective on different things. So we're an industry. We know we're an industry that's important. We know we're an industry of growth. We're an industry of jobs. We're an industry where we should have more investment. We're an industry to solve many of the great consumer challenges, whether they be food security or whether they be sustainability in carbon capture. We are the industry. And now we have the opportunity and a better platform to be able to do that. It's up to us as an industry to elevate and to leverage that and be able to do it in a concise message. And as Jill said in her presentation, deliver it to the audiences, because every audience is different, but to be able to deliver it in an audience in bite-sized pieces that'll resonate with them. The challenge is on us to be able to go a little bit further, I think, right now.
I would agree with that. And I think that the food supply chain and how food is produced and how it gets to store shelves has been amplified like we've never seen before. And even in the crisis mode, okay, so where's the bottleneck? People were wondering where bottlenecks were, so actually wondering about how their food was produced and where it was coming from, and then if they would have it. I think it's a huge opportunity for us, and it would be amiss to not capitalize on being able to share how our food supply system works and the fragility of our bigger industry, our bigger plants, for example, and how important they are and what they do and why they're there. But then also, how could we bring more investment into our province or into the country to have more constant supply and being able to supply more of our product here instead of always exporting our raw product, for example? And how can we bring more jobs back to Alberta? I know that for the Champions of Agriculture, that is a big topic that's at the table right now, is how do we then build that public trust and the fact that people will be happy to hear that we're creating more jobs here in agriculture and we have a great product, but the supply chain can be here as well. We still want to be able to have those relationships with many countries and be able to export and import. There's no doubt about that, but how can we ramp that up? I think that that's where we are. We have to seize the opportunity, and we have to do. I think too many times we just talk about what we want to do or how great we're doing, but we just have to activate. And honestly, that's why I have a podcast. I felt, why not just go ahead and do something and we'll see where it goes. And it's been very successful. And I think I would just encourage anyone who's watching to do the same. Like, it might not be a podcast, it might be a blog, or it might be setting up a new company or investing in a company locally that you feel will be part of that supply chain that will be able to allow us to grow our economy and also have a safe, affordable, constant food supply.
That's great. We have a question sent in to us here. What do you think we in the various livestock and crop sectors and in agriculture as a whole need to do to hold bad actors accountable and own that they are part of the industry? What is the plan from your different perspectives on ways to deal with these instances?
Well, I'll start with that. It's imperative that we call them out. That we're only as good. We're collectively only as strong as our weakest link. And so when you see, I showed a picture, a touch earlier ago about this example of an animal that wasn't necessarily treated like that. The supply chain comes down hard on that, and let's understand that the supply chain will come down hard on that. And it'll hurt us and hurt us badly. So if that's the way it's going to be, so we owe it to ourselves to hold ourselves accountable and to bring those up. And if we're not living to the code if there's an actor that is not living to the code that we're operating with, then we owe it to ourselves to be able to step forward and make those corrections. May not be fun and may not be friendly in a rural community, but the reality is we're only as good as our weakest link.
And I would echo that. And I think that there are a lot of plans in place. So if there ever was an instance where you were uncomfortable or you weren't sure or there was a bad actor, and when it was in regards to animal care, for example, then that's where there is a Farm Animal Care Council, and every province has contacts for you to be able to get those people some help if that's the case, and that's done in a very professional manner, usually with their local veterinarian, and that they're in contact with Alberta Farm Animal Care Council, for example, and they deal with that very effectively. And then if they're needing to bring in additional backup, when it comes to like on the criminal side, for example, then that's where it will go. But it gets out of your hands, but you can report those things. Contacting your local organization is really the best avenue if you are seeing anything out there. And that's really important that we are always watching out because, we need to make sure that number one, the animals are cared for and the people that are looking after them, if they're not fit, there's probably a reason. Got to get to the bottom of that.
Ashley, any final thoughts?
Honestly, it's both Kim and Jill hit it right on the nail there. On the grain side, I keep rolling it through my mind as well when it comes to stewardship. Proper land stewardship at the end of the day as well. Everybody has different production practices that they institute on their operations, but the more we can educate and create awareness of how these practices affect our long-term outlook of the sustainability of the industry, then the better equipped our producers are. And there are producers out there that are stuck in their ways and such, but it's the opportunity to open minds and open production practices on how they actually affect the stewardship of our land and our environments. So it's a different perspective in the sense from on the livestock side, but I think it is definitely an issue that needs to be addressed and increase the awareness and education.
I'd maybe add one other point too, though, Craig, is that on the crop side, we also, especially here in the West, where we export so darn much, and if we're using a crop protection product that isn't registered or isn't registered for a specific country, the impact that can have on our entire industry is massive. And let's remember that in today's geopolitical world, where we're going around with all these things, that these are the minor things that can be major in different areas. So we gotta look out for that. We gotta make sure that we are doing the right thing, because we will get caught, and you will get caught, and it is not a real pleasant experience. So.
And honestly, to add to that, Kim, it's a difficult conversation. Standing in a field with a producer that production practices haven't been followed properly for product use is an extremely difficult conversation. And the more awareness that we can get out there about proper practices and proper usage of herbicides and pesticide products, the better understanding our consumers will have on what the role of these products are. And there's some producers that aren't going to want to understand. But it's a difficult conversation to have.
Well, that's a very amazing conversation. That and I think it's a good split as first steps for some farmers that are looking for that answer. Like, how do I have this conversation? What should I be doing on my farm to help improve consumer confidence and public trust? I want to thank all three of you for joining us this afternoon. It's a pleasure to have all three of you on the same call here and to talk about this, which we're all very passionate about. So thank you so much.